This is the ripple effect of well-being in work and life. I'm Dr. Ken Thompson, here with Dr. Stephanie Romero.
On this show, we explore how holistic well-being practices can transform our individual lives and our collective capacity for care.
We're bringing you the science, the stories, and the specific practices that reduce stress and build resilience in our homes, our offices, and our communities.
We're talking to people to see how their perspectives, practices, and work are creating a ripple effect for a better world.
Thanks for joining us.
We often talk about the self as something that stops at our skin, but today's guest invites us to consider a much larger definition of belonging. Julie Jansen is a meditation practitioner, movement educator, and a certified forest therapy guide who has spent her life finding awe and homecoming in the natural world. As a co-founder of Earth Body Presence and an instructor at Portland State University, Julie bridges the gap between our internal somatic experience and the living earth around us. Her work is a gentle yet profound invitation to remember our wholeness through land-based practices and mindful movement. Living and practicing on the ancestral homelands in the Upper Chinook peoples in Portland, Oregon, Julie helps navigate the modern world by reconnecting with the ancient rhythms of the forest. I'm so excited to dive into how the earth-body connection can help us find our way back to ourselves. Julie, I am so grateful that you agreed to be on my podcast, and I'm excited to deepen our relationship through this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie, so much for having me. I'm just delighted and honored to be here today.
Awesome. Well, I always love to start all of these conversations with the question of what has been your journey that brought you to this place? And for folks listening, you have a lot of connection to land and nature and practice. And so I'd love to hear the story of how you got to where you are.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I think I'll start with my childhood, which wasn't as steeped in nature as I might have liked it to be. My parents' idea of camping is going to like the Holiday Inn. So that wasn't really a part of my childhood, but I do have some like really vivid and visceral memories of like connection to land kind of despite that. And one, I live in the Pacific Northwest now, but I grew up mostly East Coast and Midwest. And one thing is fireflies. I remember just in my childhood, just the like seeing one little light and then, two, and then like 1,000. And just that being a very magical part of my childhood, connecting me to land and to more than human beings. The other, and that's, from a very early age. And then another memory I have from childhood is I was in middle school and we lived in Baltimore, Maryland at the time. And walking, there was a creek behind, like kind of way far behind our house, and I remember seeing a blue heron for the first time. And just like I remember time standing still and kind of like being amazed that this creature existed in the world and on the earth. And that is just another really deep memory for me. So my background, I'm a somatic movement teacher. I'm a forest therapy guide, and I also guide and teach meditation. Movement is another important thing kind of throughout my life. When I feel sad or upset or angry, like going for a walk, moving my body in some way is what kind of helps and heals me. So that's a little bit about like my childhood background. Um, as an adult in my mid 30s, I I entered a yoga teacher training, and that was kind of my segue into, like, meditation world. We had an 80-something-year-old meditation teacher in my training, and his name was Simon is Simon. I think he's still teaching yoga and meditation. And he's just yeah, and at first I was kinda like, "I don't think this is for me. I can't, sit still and my mind won't." I mean, falsehood of, like, the mind needs to be, like, blank and clear in order to meditate, and I was like, "Oh, I can't do that." But then just keep continuing to come back to it, and when I became pregnant with my first child, that's when I was kinda like, "I need this practice in my life. Like, I need to bring this in." And that's when I became a little more serious about practice.
Thank you for sharing that. I also, when I get angry or I would describe it as high energy emotions, find that walking really, really supports me working those emotions through the body.
Yeah.
Sometimes just sitting with an emotion is a good thing to do, but some of those really high energy emotions for me, I, I think the intelligence of the body supports us in processing them, and movement, of course, is the way that worked for me as well. So thank you for naming that, because I don't think we always think of that when we think of emotional intelligence or emotional processing, that actually there's some wisdom in using the body to help us process the difficult things that come up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because emotion emerges in the body first,
Mhm.
and it processes into our brain. So, emotion lives in our bodies for sure.
Yeah. And you also are the founder of Earth Body Presence. Um, I would love to know, how did that come about? What was the inspiration about that? And how do you see it as kind of linking? You named somatic movement, forest therapy, and meditation. Like, is that all wound up in there? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, it is wound up in there quite a bit. So Earth Body Presence started, it was first called Acting in Presence, and myself and my friend and collaborator Morgan Pace Bolton started Acting in Presence during the pandemic. And it started as literally like it was just a Zoom call with friends and family. And we were just talking about mindfulness and kind of like working with mindfulness during the pandemic. And that Zoom call, everyone was like really interested and liked, and we guided some practices during that time too. At that time, I was in the Inward Bound Mindfulness Education year-long teacher training. And so kind of drawing on those experiences to bring this to community. And that it became, we every other week we met via Zoom, via just um yeah, via Zoom, and we worked together, practiced together, and it was kind of a lifeline during a time where there was so much disconnection and lack of community. Um, Creating a little community, and it was just a very we tried to create like a safe enough space. We have agreements in place, but just inviting people to share their experience. And for me, like that window into people's experience during that time was just like really incredible. Um, Another thing that's really important to Morgan and me is grounding in where we are, and honoring the original people of the land. So right now I'm on Chinook and Kalapuya land in what is now Portland, Oregon. But we start with a land acknowledgement, and really looking at and honoring indigenous wisdom in a lot of what we do and what we bring into the world. But yeah, it started as like every other week we'd meet via Zoom and connect. We'd guide meditation, we'd guide a movement practice, and we would just open it up to hear what was going on in people's lives during COVID. And from there, the kind of after COVID fell away, we started offering in-person retreats. And Morgan has a beautiful yurt in her backyard. So we gather in her yurt now for Women's Circle. And yeah, it's just kind of grown from there. So that's kind of how we started. It was really based in need and forming community focused on and centered around mindfulness, presence-based practices, and connection to the natural world.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. I'm really curious around the somatic piece and the piece about being in nature. So, how is it that, because often people think about meditation as you're sitting in a structure, in a space, in a house, in a meditation center inside, right? So and then even when we talk about somatic presence or somatic therapeutic interventions, like I haven't often heard of people doing that work outside. So what do you think changes when we bring that kind of work into the outdoors and into nature, as opposed
Um,
to a home or a studio or a center?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I just want to bring in that the Buddha was enlightened under a Bodhi tree outside. And, the monks in India, I mean, meditation happened outside in nature, in the natural world. And, I also practice inside too. I mean, I think like both are beautiful, but there is a place for practicing outside and moving one's body outside in a mindful way. And I guess that, that kind of like segues into forest bathing or forest therapy, which is something else that I bring into the world. So, our nervous systems are haven't changed much in 40,000 years, since we've emerged as humans. And so we are attuned to the natural world. The sounds of birdsong, the sounds of rushing water, the sounds of the leaves blowing through the trees. Those are things that like let our nervous system know, the rest and digest side of things. It helps calm and settle and center. And so experiencing that like while meditating is a lovely experience if if some of the listeners haven't tried it before.
I love that. I love the idea of meditating outside myself. Yeah, thank you for sharing your perspective on that. And I love that you brought in the Buddha's enlightenment story. Really, really good. So
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, you named forest bathing and forest therapy. Like, are those, just for folks listening, are those the same thing? Is there any difference between those terms?
That's a great question. So I was trained through the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, and they would say yes that they are they are different. So forest therapy originated from Shinrin-yoku, which is a Japanese practice, which Shinrin-yoku translates to forest bathing, and it originated in Japan in the 80s when the Japanese, uh, economy was transitioning from a more agriculturally based economy where people were outside more often to more industrial, like computer-based economy. And the Japanese government noticed that, people were cancer was rising and like autoimmune diseases were on the rise and they didn't know why. And so they created all these different interventions. And Shinrin-yoku or forest bathing was was an intervention that the government actually like kind of began to do research on and noticed that time 2 hours is kind of the magic amount of time in nature, but after spending 2 hours in nature, cortisol drops, and there's just a lot of health benefits that come, both mental and physical health benefits that come from spending, 2 hours in nature. So are they the same thing? I mean, I kind of use those words interchangeably. Um, Forest bathing in Japan, it's actually prescribed as preventative health care, and in Scandinavian countries too, I think, and in South Korea, it's prescribed as both mental and physical preventative and healthcare if as one is experiencing, health difficulties. Our healthcare system is not that enlightened yet, so we do not have that here, in the United States. But, forest therapy, Amos Clifford, who founded ANFT, the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy, he considers it kind of a more heart-based rather than, like, healthcare oriented, kind of a heart-based connection to the natural world. Um, yeah. Yep.
Thanks for explaining that. And I've heard about these other countries that have these different things that they are like health insurance, even if it's socialized, is paying for, and doctors are able to write a prescription for like a retreat or, like you said, forest therapy. It's just so beautiful and wonderful, and I really love that you named the stressors that people were feeling in Japan at that time and how forest bathing came about, because I think like it's only gotten more fast paced in the world since then, as someone who is old enough to remember the 80s. In the 80s we were just getting cell phones and really just getting up to speed on the internet and all of the things, and now I mean we're just so fast paced that I think there have been studies about like how many times people look at their phone every day, and the kind of response that people have when they're looking at their phone, emotional response, right? And chemical and biochemical, physiological responses. And so I guess I'm really curious around, how would you describe what happens actually when people do take those 2 hours to just go and sit, no phone, and experience a forest bathing or a forest therapy 2-hour experience?
Yeah, I guess I'll lead into that. So not too long ago, just a couple months ago, I guided a walk for a CEO of a really big nonprofit based in Salem, Oregon, actually, and I know his wife, his partner. We're kind of running some of the same circles, and I guess he was very skeptical of the forest bathing practice, forest therapy practice. And at the end, he turned to me and he said, "Thank you for remembering what calm feels like in my body." And his partner was like crying. Their daughter was there too. It was with their whole family, and I'll bring into, forest bathing is really, I consider it like a remembering, and a remembering of our true nature as earth bodies. And the word remember, from Latin, means again, and memorare means be mindful of. And so truly forest bathing is a practice, forest therapy is a practice of remembering that we are the water, we are the elements that live in the soil. Our bodies are ecosystems, microbiomes containing bacteria, fungi, viruses. We are not separate from the natural world. And so coming into the forest or whatever natural area, slowing down and having time to remember our earth bodies. That is what the practice is all about. And I'm happy to give more detail on about what happens during a forest bathing walk if you're interested. But yeah, I think for me, it's kind of that remembering, like if we remember we are water, we protect the water. If we remember we are the earth and the soil, like our bodies can't live separate from this earth. The earth feeds us. Um, Everything you see when you look around your home was made from something that came from the earth. So we're not separate. And I think this experience helps to remember that.
Yeah, I love all of that. And it's always interesting to me like how somehow our brains create the separation, right?
Mm,
The dualism of humans and the rest of nature, which you were just naming, right?
right,
You were just naming that somehow we're not part of the world that we're
right.
part of. Somehow we are not the same or of the same stuff. There's, in Buddhism, there's a lot of discussions around dualism and how we create dualistic thinking. And that's just such a huge example of that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not a mistake. I mean, dominant culture, the way that dominant culture operates, and capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy, all those things function with our separation from the earth. We can't extract from the earth if we remember we're not going, like I said, if we remember we are the water, we remember that this isn't, we're not separate from. And I think for me this practice is like I want people to remember, and I think through that remembering we can reimagine and re-envision like what can our future be, because right now we're we're headed down a pretty slippery slope.
Yeah, I'm grateful you're naming extraction and extractive culture and how we live in this very extractive culture, because it's also making me feel like that CEO who said, "You help me remember how it is to be calm." Like just that, taking that time to be still, taking that time to not do and just be is some strange in this weird world we live in, some strange form of resistance, right, to the whole predominant capitalistic gotta be productive culture. um yeah, so I'm just really curious on like how you work with that in your own self and your own practice. I know for me, that's a daily practice. I have to get all the things done, right? And I do feel pressure as a person who's running an organization to do all of the things. And uh I have to stop and I have to pause and I have to
Yeah,
create spaces where I'm not doing anything.
absolutely. So like what does my practice look like? Is that kind of your question? So I tend to get up, fairly early, around, I don't know, between 5 and 5:30. And that's when my meditation, like the first thing I do in the morning is I have a sitting practice. And we just moved houses, and where we used to live, I had a beautiful like covered area where I could sit out because it rains a lot in Portland, Oregon. I don't know if you heard that story, but it does. I had a really beautiful covered area, and I don't have that anymore. And I had a place like right outside my bedroom door was a like a deck that I would sit on, and I'm still kind of figuring that out and cultivating like a new space for myself to sit outside. So mainly my practice is inside right now. In the morning, my sitting practice, but as it warms up, and spring is definitely upon us. I will be sitting outside in the mornings, and now that it's not like completely dark, um, where I live at 5:30 in the morning, that's when the sun's rising pretty much. Um, so yeah, so meditation happens, for that's the first thing I do when I get up. And then I have a movement practice, a yoga practice that I do. I have two children. So I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. So then, they get up and I help them off to school. And then when I have the time, I try to go for like a walk in the neighborhood. And there is just a little grove of trees, and I do have a special connection with a couple of the trees, along my walk that I, just say hello to, say good morning to, and, try to notice kind of the changes in the world, the seasonal changes that are happening kind of all around, through that time and through that walk when I have the time. And I mean that walk could be 15 minutes or it could be an hour, just depending on like what I have time for. And then at least once a week, I try to get to like a natural area, and there's a place really close to me. It's called Whitaker Ponds, and it is about like a 10-minute drive from my house, and, it's really close. It's like 10 minutes away from the airport, so it's an industrial area, but it's a little pocket of nature in an industrial area. I've seen river otters there, I've seen osprey, I've seen bald eagles there, so it's like this pocket of nature. So like I said, once a week, I really try to get um into the natural world in like kind of a deeper way, but I do try to touch on it in my daily life as well.
Thanks for sharing your practices with us. And I love that you're naming like a whole variety of practices so that, oftentimes I think people always believe practice has to look a specific way. And I always am grateful through these conversations to just shine a light on the fact that people find ways to practice that suit their life, their stage, their time availability, all of the things. And you just gave some great examples of, yeah, different ways to be in practice in your daily life. I'm appreciating that. We are lucky in Pittsburgh. It is rainy here too. Don't know if you know that about Pittsburgh. We have a lot of rain. In fact, it was raining earlier this morning. Um, but we do have a ton of nature all around us. We really, really are lucky in Pittsburgh to have a lot of public parks that are huge and have big forested areas. And we also have some like tiny little parklets dotted all along the urban landscape. And we have rivers. We have three rivers, and the area has done a very good job, and continuing to work on it, cleaning up all of the old industrial sites that were all along the rivers. I mean, there still are some, but they have really tried to clean up our rivers and our shores to make them beautiful and accessible and not contaminated as they used to be. Um, but I know that some folks, even though we're very blessed with all of that in Pittsburgh, struggle to find a space to be in touch with nature that's accessible to them, you know? So I like that you're naming going through a walk on your neighborhood and just having a relationship with a couple of trees that are in your neighborhood. Because I feel like most neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, maybe not all, but most neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, if you walk around, there'll be at least a couple of trees somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think just forming relationship with, what's growing right outside your home, your apartment, your wherever you live. Do you have a house plant to connect with? I mean, even I don't know how you feel about like spiders and ants and things in your house, but like all of that, is like we are in relationship with all of it. I know for in our house, my 9-year-old is like really terrified of spiders, but like we don't kill spiders in my house. We catch them and then let them go. And, once again, it's like looking out your window, is there a tree that you can see and just spend time with? So there are ways of connecting within, like, yeah, your neighborhood with a house plant, um, with any living, insects that might exist in your home. There are lots of ways to connect to the natural world. And once again, even just considering like everything you see is made from the natural world. So even remembering into, oh, that table I see over there is made of wood. That wood grew in a forest somewhere at one point in time, is a way to kind of remember and connect.
I love that. Thanks for bringing that back in. The thing that was running through my mind too, as you were speaking, is I'm a big fan of Pema Chodron, who's another Buddhist writer who I absolutely love. And she, somewhere, she either said or wrote that I read or heard, um, but if you are, like, if your mind is spinning, if you feel yourself cycling down, right, like you're spiraling in some way, just look at the sky.
Mhm.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just
Yeah.
look at the sky. And then, so when you were speaking, I was thinking, even if you have nothing growing green near where you live, you always have access to sky,
Yes. Yes.
right?
That's
And clouds, right?
sky, clouds, moon, stars,
Yes.
sunrise, sunset. Yeah, those are all available to everyone.
Yes. So if you can't get out into the forest, friends, really appreciate sky for a minute.
Yeah.
I love thinking about that. Well, I am noticing the time, and we have successfully been talking for around 30 minutes, believe it or not. So I would love to know, was there something that I did not ask about that you were hoping to share in this conversation?
Um, One thing that I just wanted to share, I'm just feeling tremendous gratitude right now for all of my like teachers and mentors. Um, Yeah, just when I was looking at some of the questions that you were going to ask and just thinking about like this journey that I've been on, learning around meditation and movement and mindfulness and forest bathing, and just like feeling so much gratitude for teachers and mentors. Caverly Morgan is a big a big mentor and teacher of mine. She founded Peace in Schools, which is the first accredited mindfulness class in the United States in high school. And she used to hold um every Wednesday she would hold space, a meditation space. And she really introduced me and IB me and Urban Mindfulness Education to relational mindfulness, which is something that we really bring in Earth Body Presence. So yeah, just I don't know, just feeling like a lot of gratitude for practice itself and everyone that's kind of helped me along the way in my practice.
Can you say a couple of words about what relational mindfulness is, just in case folks don't know what that is?
Yeah, relational mindfulness is I mean mindfulness in relationship, mindfulness with other people. So relational mindfulness really centers mindful listening. So listening to another person without thinking about what am I going to say next, which my gosh, do we all do that, right? Like we all like what am I going to say next? But kind of letting go of what I'm going to say next and truly being with a person and listening to them, which is like a gift. It's just a gift to be like listened to without an agenda. Um and then sometimes there can be some mirroring back of like what the other person said. But yeah, a lot of it centers on, a listening practice. Um which is something that we can bring into so many, I can bring into so many aspects of my life, just yes. So that's like, I guess the tip of the iceberg in terms of
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you just for naming that.
yeah.
And I always love to end all of my episodes by asking folks if there is a resource or a book that has supported you in your journey and that maybe you could recommend to our listeners that they could explore.
Yeah. Well, I was looking just to say, I did send you a link, but there are forest bathing walks happening in Pittsburgh. I did a little.
Yes. And we'll put that in the notes. Yeah. And just so you know, like we have collaborated with them, those folks, that link, those
Oh,
people, and we've done work with them together. And so if anyone listening is interested, it's through the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy and they're wonderful. And we'll put that link in the chat or in the notes.
yeah. Yes, fantastic. So one resource that I have, it's called Love Letter to the Earth by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it is just a gorgeous book. It's not very long. And if you're open to it, maybe I'll just read the first paragraph
Yeah,
of.
go for it.
So once again, Love Letter to the Earth by Thich Nhat Hanh. And read this at the end of lots of my forest bathing walks. That and poetry, but this is from that book. At this very moment, the earth is above you, below you, all around you, and even inside you. The earth is everywhere. You may be used to thinking of the earth as only the ground beneath your feet, but the water, the sea, the sky, and everything around us comes from the earth. Everything outside us and everything inside us comes from the earth. We often forget that the planet we are living on has given us all the elements that make up our bodies. The water in our flesh, our bones, and all the microscopic cells inside our bodies all come from the earth and are part of the earth. The earth is not just the environment we live in. We are the earth, and we are always carrying her within us.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
sharing that. Well, we'll definitely link in the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, and you did offer a few other suggestions for folks. So if anyone's interested in exploring some readings, that'll be in the notes. Yeah, any last thoughts before we end, Julie?
Yeah, so we do hold virtual women's circle, and I do offer virtual forest bathing through Earth Body Presence. Um, Unfortunately, I think the time difference, usually women's circle is 7 to 8 virtually, which I think would be like 10 to 11 your time, which is maybe a little late for a lot of folks. But if anyone's curious and would ever want to join one of our virtual women's circles, you would be absolutely welcome. And if you come to Portland, yeah, check out what we've got going on.
Amazing. Yes, we'll put your link down there in the notes as well. So much fun to get to know you a little better and to just hear about what you're thinking and doing. And yeah, it was lovely. Thank you again.
Welcome, Stephanie. Thank you for this opportunity. It's been just a delight, a pleasure.
Same for me.